AI is everywhere, and I mean everywhere, and it is going to become a bigger and bigger part of our lives. Emily, you and I just saw this really, really interesting doc called, fittingly, The AI Doc, or How I Became an Apocalyptimist.
Yes.
Is that correct?
I think you said it correctly.
Whew. So it is
job.
actually now, if you're interested, it's a PG-13 movie. It is now available for rent on Prime Video. But it essentially talks a lot about just sort of the future of AI. The guy who hosted is a guy named Daniel Rower. And he is an expectant father throughout most of the movie, and he's trying to figure out whether AI is going to make the world a better or worse place for him.
For his son.
For his son, exactly. So he discovered that the answer to that question is yes.
And no.
Exactly. So, Emily, you wrote a Dynamite blog about this particular doc. Can you talk to us a little bit about your initial reactions after you walked out of the movie?
I thought it was interesting. Like, there's a lot of information to process in there. So if you don't know a whole lot about AI, walking into that can kind of feel like information overload.
It felt that way to me. I'll be honest with you. It was a lot.
It is a lot. But I think that I'm a little, I like to imagine that I'm a little more informed, just simply because of my role here at PluggedIn. So my initial reaction was simply that, well, none of that surprises me. Everything that was said, was pretty much right in line with what I had expected to hear. You had the people who are all about AI, and they're like, it's going to save the world. It's going to cure cancer. It's going to solve world hunger. It's going to do all these amazing things. And they were so optimistic. And then you had the doomsdayers who were like, yep, it's going to take over. In fact, it may have already done so, and we should just be hunkering down in a bunker and getting off the grid. And ironically, these are the same people who are like top developers in AI, so it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's a little bit freaky.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, so you do not like what you were doing. You must be getting paid a lot of money, or you would not still be doing it. That was kind of my thought in the back of my mind, my cynical thoughts. But yeah, no. The thing that I think maybe stood out to me, and maybe that our audience, I think, would be most interested in, is that the one thing that kind of made me feel bad for Roher and, his wife and really just his whole crew is that there's a definite lack of faith in there. And I don't mean faith in AI. I do mean faith in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like maybe some of his fears could have been relieved by knowing by just having a faith background and, knowing that it's okay. It's okay because AI is not in control. God is, that sort of mindset. But, that's kind of what ended up happening is that even though he does not have faith, he did speak to his sagely parents is what I'll call them, because they did offer him some really good advice. They were just like, you can't obsess over the things you can't control.
Yeah.
And it was just like, yep. And it was a very poignant moment in the film, I think. And it stood out to me. And it was probably my favorite moment in the film because I was just like, that's the message right there. Like, don't end your film. This is it. You just said your message, Yeah. But and again, I think if he had maybe. I think that, if the message had been focused on, if it had been filmed by like a Christian filmmaker, perhaps, maybe that's where the Christian filmmaker would have leaned in, so different perspectives, different worldviews results in a different movie,
Yeah, it was really interesting. And I think that takeaway, that was also one of the most poignant moments for me. And I think that's one of the things that as Christians, we know. Right? We are not in control, but God is. And that can be a really encouraging thing when you're dealing with a movie like this. But yeah, when you're talking about this particular movie, you have Daniel. He goes into this process he's looking for answers. Is the world going to be a better place, or is it going to be a worse place? He talks to all those smartest people in the AI community, pretty much. There's a few people who did not sit down with him. Mark Zuckerberg was one of them who did not. But
that's
really,
not shocking.
Really,
neither did Elon Musk. Elon Musk, I think it said that he agreed to talk, but then scheduling never worked out, and then Zuckerberg just never got back to him. But Sam Altman did talk to him, who's the CEO of OpenAI, and the president of Anthropic also talked to him. So there were
big movers,
and there were a couple of other AI CEOs and presidents who talked to him as well. I just don't remember their names.
Yeah. But it was really interesting to hear sort of their perspective and what they're sort of building to. And you do sort of get a sense, I have no idea what the faith background is for any of these people, right? But you do get a sense that we are on our own. And so this is either a really grand hope for humanity, or it could be the end of it. And the thing that I took away from is you have the people who are really concerned about what AI can do. And okay, so it can be used in really horrific ways. There's going to be a race to develop these really strong AI tools that we just don't know what they're going to do. It could really be the end of civilization as we know it. And that is one side of the equation. The other side is that AI can solve all of the world's problems. It can solve hunger. It can solve climate change. It can solve all of these issues because it just is going to be so much smarter than us. And from a Christian perspective, one of the things that I really walked away from is that both the optimistic and the pessimistic side terrified me. Right, because
I can see that.
Because on one hand, you have this Armageddon-like environment that AI could push us into, according to some. But even when you're treating AI as the answer to all of the world's ills, you're turning it into a god, and that is it kind of freaks me out a little bit.
There's a part of me that really wants to be optimistic because I'm like, okay, in the right hands, used in the right way by the right people, AI could launch us into like a Star Trek-esque universe where nobody has to work. You work because you want to work. You work to better yourself, to better humanity, to, for the betterment of the world and the universe and whatnot. That was kind of Gene Roddenberry's vision for Star Trek. And I'm kind of like, okay, that'd be kind of neat. But then, as you just said, there are people who will not use it for good things, who are going to use it to create weapons. And, we've seen a lot of news recently about like deep fakes and how those are being used to sexually abuse people and harass them and exploit them and whatnot. And that's horrible. And so not Gene Roddenberry's vision for Star Trek. But then... and this is so I'm like, okay, I can see how, I can see both sides of that. But the true pessimist, or maybe the realist in me, is like, but what is AI actually going to be used for? What it's already being used for, which is to get quick answers to questions, to self-diagnose yourself with medical conditions, and and create deep fakes online. And create AI slop and post it on YouTube. And it's like, oh, well, that is the extent of AI. That is what it's actually going to be used for by the vast majority of people who have access to it, and therefore it won't actually impact us.
So let me actually ask you, because that's a really interesting point. There's always been this theory about singularity, right? Where when AI becomes sentient, when it becomes conscious, and it can start thinking on its own, truly thinking on its own. You sound like you are a skeptic about that.
I am.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen in your opinion.
The way I see it, and this actually comes back to faith.
Yeah.
Human beings cannot beget something in that way. You can't. It's like we can have children, and God gives that child a soul, but we cannot create a soul ourselves. God is the only one who's capable of creating souls, and that level of sentience, human beings are not capable of creating that. We can beget children, but we cannot create artificial sentience.
Yeah. It's always interesting to me. when you think about this issue and that issue of sentience, I go back to all the Frankenstein movies that I've seen and reviewed, and
It's
the
alive.
idea, it's alive, and yeah, you have this sense of when we move in that direction, the big message of the Frankenstein, even the newest Frankenstein on Netflix, which no one should watch, but
read our review
the
first.
core message is that you're playing God. You're moving into this area that we shouldn't do, and it really does feel like AI sort of pushes into that same area. And when I think about the concept of AI and creating this semi-sentient thing, it reminds me of just like a copy of a copy, right? We are God's greatest creation. We have all of us. We have that divine spark within us. We all know from Christian doctrine that we're fallen creatures as well. We fail, we're broken, we mess up. We are not the creatures that God designed us to be because of our fallenness. So when you have those fallen creatures creating something, the idea is you can't make something, in my opinion, you can't make something better from something that's worse. Does that make sense? It feels like, they can think really good, but they're going to have the very same flaws, only probably magnified, that we have. And that's going to be an issue because we are really problematic creatures in our fallen state.
Well, and at the end of the day, what is AI? It's a series of programs. It is programs. And yes, you can create the AIs that are capable of writing additional programs, but if you were to trace that source code back, it still comes back to the original programming, programmed by, as you just said, a flawed human. Like, there's always going to be flaws. There's always going to be glitches in the system, glitches in the matrix, and there's just like, and that's another thing people are like, they're like, oh my gosh, what if we wind up in a matrix-like world where the machines take over and such? And I don't know. I just kind of sit there and I'm like, okay, what are the limitations of AI? Well, AI cannot taste. It cannot smell. It can send electrical impulses for touch, but it can't tell this is a soft, fluffy object versus this is like, all the different things that make us human, that make even the animals, capable of comprehending so much more of the world. AI is so limited. It's like it can see and it can hear, but it can't really see and hear. It's basically just processing pixels, or because even when it's seeing through camera. Through a camera? What is a camera? It's a series. A camera image is a series of pixels. So it can process those pixels, and when it sees the pixels arranged in a certain way, it knows from AI training that, oh, this is the image of a human based on previous pixels that I've looked at that were identified as a human by what? Another human.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, it all comes back to humans. Humans created this machine. It is all a series of programs. It is all a series of ones and O's, but it cannot think for itself. All it can do is process information at a incredibly fast rate, faster than what humans can process. But it is limited by the information that the human provides to it.
Yeah, and I think that you hit on something that is really resonant to me. One of the things I wrote one time way long ago is what separates humanity and from anything else that we've created, anything else that God's created. And in some ways, I sort of think about the idea of laughter, the idea of being able to take joy in something, to be able to feel. And when you talk about that really intelligence, yes, they can think really well.
They can process really well.
Really well.
I like to make that distinction. Humans think, machines process.
But the feeling, the idea of being able to look outside and see the mountains, see the ocean, and be awed by that sense. that's something that I think will always be beyond artificial intelligence. It's one of the things that makes us human. It's one of the things that makes us God's creation, is the ability that we have to love the rest of the world that he's created. And I think that that's something that, as we sort of process this new world that we move into, that's something to keep in mind. I guess one of the things that I would ask you, Em, as we sort of close this conversation down, AI is already so much a part of our world. This isn't something that is coming as much as it is here in a way. And it is influencing us so much in just our day-to-day lives. Even some of you might be watching it because of an AI algorithm, you know. So when it comes to moms and dads who are trying to help coach their kids through this new world, do you have any advice for them?
I would just say, I think we need to take AI with a grain of salt. I don't think it's something we need to treat on an apocalyptic level. And I think there's biblical reasoning for that. We're told, you know, we cannot add a single day to our lifespan by worrying. So that applies to AI. It's like, you can sit here and worry about AI. It's not gonna add a single hour to your lifespan. So, you know, we're told we shouldn't be worrying about that. What we should be focused on, and again, I think this is all in the book of Matthew. I don't remember the exact verse, but we are told that we need to focus on the kingdom of God. And if you're so focused on AI and what it can or cannot do, that you forget to focus on the kingdom, that you forget to put God first, or to evangelize, to talk to your neighbor about Jesus, if you are missing those opportunities because you're so caught up in what AI is going to do in the next 10 years, you're going to miss the boat in a way. I think that when you're guiding your children through it, it's a matter of like, okay, AI is a tool that can be used or misused. You need to use it correctly. You need to use it ethically, and, don't cheat on your homework with it, because that's not the point of learning. So I think parents need to, you need to instill that in your children. But really and truly, I think it just comes down to the base of it. No matter how AI changes, the base of it is that AI is not in control, God is. Yeah. Even if AI technically does take control, if AI technically takes over, whatever, God is still in control.
And it doesn't surprise him.
Yes, and none of this surprises him. God knew we were going to create this, just like he knew. There's it kind of feels like the Tower of Babel, And I think that's actually kind of what grounds me in a way, because it's like, okay, God took down the Tower of Babel and confused our languages so that we wouldn't sit there and put ourselves on this godlike pedestal, AI, I think, is limited in that same way. I think the same way that God limited the people at the Tower of Babel by confusing their language, I think that he is confused. The reason we have so many, doomsdayers and optimists and apocalyptimists, as it were, is because we are still confused. We cannot reach that godlike status, and it's all going to be okay, because at the end of the day, what is going to happen? Jesus is going to return, and he's going to establish his kingdom on earth, and that is what we need to be focused on.
Yeah, I love that. So that is our conversation about AI and the AI doc. Feel free to chime in with your own thoughts, because we'd love to hear what you think about this issue. Are you worried about AI? Are you excited about it? How do you process it? And how do you process it as a Christian? So be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. We'd love to hear what you would like us to talk about it, because, we do like to hear the sound of our own voices. So thanks so much for joining us, and see you next time.